I'm Dapper Dan Gavoston, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
And I'm mischievous Mark Ginocchio, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, but the annuals don't count.
Well, welcome everybody to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk. Mark, why don't you tell everybody about how they can subscribe to the show?
Absolutely. If you all want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, you can subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. There you will find every other week we put out a mainline episode of our flagship show, and sprinkled in between, we review new comics, as well as interview some of the greatest Spider-Man creators of yesterday and today. That makes this the perfect time to start listening.
So what are we going to be talking about today, Mark?
Yeah, it's a review episode, as you implied, Dan. So today you and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 78, entitled Beyond Chapter 4. This issue was written by Kelly Thompson, with pencils and inks by Sara Pichelli and Jim Towe, colors by Nolan Woodard and Rachelle Rosenberg, and a cover by Arthur Adams and Alejandro Sanchez. Letters, of course, by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released on November 10th, 2021.
All right.
So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit?
Go ahead.
So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in this episode? I keep jumping in on you. I'm sorry.
Give it one more go, Mark.
I will say, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in this issue?
I'd be happy to, Mark. And hey, editor Rick, why don't you cue up some music to get me going through this? So here we go. In this episode, fighting back the effects of Morbius's bite, Ben theorizes that perhaps Morbius was seeking a cure for his vampirism using his radioactive blood. In the face of exhaustion, Ben lures Morbius back to his guarded apartment at the Beyond Corporation. The building's AI, Langston, allows Ben through but blasts Morbius' arm off, forcing him to flee. Ben passes out and is taken to the ER while Janine is left alone, abandoned in her apartment. Before giving Ben an antitoxin, though, Maxine hesitates, pondering the effects they could get out of letting Ben become a vampire, but ultimately is convinced to give him the antitoxin. Meanwhile, Felicia sneaks into Peter's hospital room and whispers something unheard to him, which causes him to momentarily slip out of his coma. Mary Jane and Felicia try to revive him with no luck, so MJ invites Felicia to stay and help look over him. Misty Knight and Colleen Wing attempt to bring in Morbius with a spider straitjacket drone. Let me say that 10 times fast. Spider straitjacket drone. They capture him and promise him treatment at Beyond. But then Monica Rambeau shows up, destroying Beyond's drones, asking them clandestinely about what they've learned while working with Beyond. Meanwhile, Ben and Janine are on a date in the park after seeing a movie called Stegman, a Comedy. We see Kraven stalking them from the shadows. So that's what happens in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 78. Mark, let's get into kind of our general thoughts on the issue. I think so far we've been really enjoying the Beyond era, but thought last issue was kind of a dip, and I don't know, we're kind of seeing the conclusion of this two-parter, I guess. Are you enjoying this kind of like in and out of stories quickly thing, and what do you think of this one overall?
Obviously the pacing is welcomed, especially after what kind of preceded this for a couple of years. But as you noted, I mean, the last issue we kind of felt a little bit of a dip, and I felt this one dipped a little more. I mean, like I'm not gonna obviously get into any kind of specific grades yet, but this kind of felt bordering on the first miss of Beyond for me so far this issue. Nothing terrible, but just just some things I think that weren't clicking, and I don't know. I think we're kind of getting away from the fun and brightness of the first three parts of what they've been doing here. So that's kind of like my general overview of an impression.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I don't know if I felt that this was all that different from the first part of this story, although I didn't love that there was this fill-in artist already on this title. I thought, Jim Towe, like, probably had a compressed timeline here to produce these pages, but his work is just not up to the quality of Sara Pichelli, that is. Although it seems kind of typical of Pichelli these days that she works pretty slowly and often misses deadlines. If you think about that Henry and J.J. Abrams, mini series or graphic novel or whatever you want to call it, that was delayed in an insane amount of time. And you could say maybe it was editorial or writing, but it seems like it was probably Pichelli. And I don't know, man. I just think it's not a great sign that we're only 4 issues in and we're already pushing back deadlines on books. This is supposed to come out a week earlier and they pushed it back, and they're bringing in fill-in artists. And I mean, maybe this thing will smooth out as it goes along and they had to rush the beginning, but it just seems odd to me that you would tout a really big artist like Pichelli and then not even get her to finish up 2 full issues.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you here, also, and we talked about this last issue as well, that I do feel that there was something kind of lacking in Pichelli's art, and I don't know if it was because of the fact that even with the missed deadline, she was moving faster than she's comfortable doing. There was just some stiffness, some kind of sloppiness I felt in some of her renderings here. Like, personally, Pichelli, for me, when this whole initiative was announced months ago, I was like, oh wow, that like her name was a draw, like it's like that. She was one of the big heavy hitters from the art side that they recruited for this. So I was excited to get her finally on Amazing Spider-Man, and yeah, between just the missed deadlines, the fill-in artists, the kind of sloppiness in the art, it kind of adds to that idea of what I said earlier about this kind of feels a little off-putting and disappointing in terms of what the potential could have been, I guess.
Before this whole creative team was announced, if you asked me who would be in my top choices to take over Amazing Spider-Man, Kelly Thompson would definitely be on that list. And not just because she's a woman, and I've long desired there to be a female voice on this title, but also because I think she's written a really good Spider-Man and Mary Jane in books like Jessica Jones, and I'm really enjoying her Captain Marvel book. She kind of does that really good kind of stiff upper lip, but also kind of like good friend quality that is Captain Marvel and Jessica Drew. I'm not, and based on these 2 issues, I'm not really sold on Kelly Thompson as like a premier voice on Amazing Spider-Man, although I'm enjoying it decently. How do you feel about her writing style and its fit for this title?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think I had less of an impression of her going into this thing than you did, because I haven't really read those stories as thoroughly as you have, and yeah, I mean, there are nuggets here that I think are really enjoyable and kind of show some interesting insights. And maybe part of it too is also like just the nature of the story, and we'll obviously get into some of this in a little bit. I mean, Peter has already been sidelined, and now there are parts of this story where Ben is sidelined, and you're kind of like, where's the Spider-Man? And and is that truly her choice, or is this kind of, this is the outline of this plot that was determined, and she happened to kind of get these issues and had to kind of work around it. So it's kind of hard to judge, but so far, like, again, it's nothing bad. It's like I'm not reading anything that's saying, oh my goodness, like, did these people understand what they're writing here? But like, I don't know, like you Zeb Wells, like, I feel like he came in on the first 2 issues, and it just like the vision of what they were going for just felt very clear to me, and what he was trying to get across, and his mix of humor and whatnot, it just felt like well executed, very concise, and get in, get out. And I feel like Kelly Thompson's been a little bit more of a struggle trying to kind of find the voice a bit. So, so far, like it's kind of been a middling result for me.
Yeah, I feel like I don't really know her Ben Reilly, and maybe she's kind of
Yeah.
figuring out that character a little bit. I think the characters that stand out are actually some of the female characters. Like her Maxine Danger to me is really interesting, and I enjoy seeing her write that character. I think about like Christos Gage. I don't know that like Christos Gage's Spider-Man really like I could pick it out of the lineup, but I could definitely tell when he was writing Dr. Octopus. That seemed very clear to me. And if Maxine Danger, as she seems to be kind of shaping up here, is kind of the subversive threat throughout all of this, is the big villain, and Kelly writes a good Maxine Danger, that's a good place for her to be, like writing somebody kind of whose morality seems maybe a little bit darker than just plain shades of gray. So that's really interesting to me. As I said in my summary, this story largely picks up right where the last one left off, with Ben getting bitten in the neck by Morbius. And we're going to pick up with a kind of extended Morbius fight that really is like showcasing a weakened Ben who has to run away from Morbius. What did you think of this whole sequence?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. And not that I was expecting us to kind of pick up with Ben in mortal danger. Although, I mean, he was roughed up pretty badly by Morbius. But like, the last issue ends, and Morbius has got his teeth, flesh and right into Spider-Man Ben Reilly's flesh, and like Ben's kind of like, oh, this can't be happening. And then like when this issue picks up, he's kind of gotten himself out of it. Although he's, like you said, he's very weakened, and I don't like. Part of me kind of wish he saw how he got out of the bite in the first place, unless Morbius just decided, I'm done. I don't know. I mean, like, it's kind of like, we missed the thread here. I mean, it wasn't like, watching Ben just kind of like lure him out wasn't, to me, the most visually interesting way they could have resolved a physical altercation between Ben and Morbius. And then, not to nitpick a bit, but I was a little disappointed. I felt like, Morbius is coming, and I think I said this in the last episode, like Morbius I came across as a real threat, which we really haven't seen in a while. And Ben in this issue too, he's kind of like, I feel like he's kind of like slagging on Morbius, like as I can't, I'm gonna die of embarrassment if the bite doesn't kill me, and I'm just kind of like, it's not like Morbius is like Grizzly or Mindworm or something. I mean, this guy, I mean, he's a legitimate I mean, he's not necessarily a villain. He's more anti-hero-ish or maybe anti-villainish. I don't know.
Yeah, anti-villain sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's more anti-villain than anti-hero, but like he's a legitimate character, threat to Spider-Man, but just because of his makeup and whatnot. So I don't know, like I again, this kind of expected a little more. We didn't really visually get much outside of just like it was clever to see how Ben tried to get out of it, but I don't know if that worked from like a visual storytelling standpoint.
I am going to be honest with you, Mark. When they blasted Morbius's arm off, it was a genuine shock to me. Like, that's a level of brutality, like, reserved for a Spider-Man villain or anti-villain that I'm not sure I've really seen that frequently. And like the kind of mortal wound that I'm sure will be resolved off panel somewhere with X and X device. But seeing it on the page was like, oh my God, they just like took a serious hunk of flesh off of this guy. They kind of undercut it with the nipple joke a moment later, but like that was fine for me. Like, and they allowed him to be a threat, even missing an arm. So it is kind of living in two worlds. I guess the thing that disappointed me about it is I kind of would like to have seen something to make this encounter a little more Morbius oriented, like maybe play with the effects of being bitten by a vampire a little bit more, or have him do something that was a little more Morbius like. I feel like you could have swapped almost any villain in here, and it would have fit, especially given like kind of the
Right.
resolution of the story. I mean, it's a Spider-Man story, and there's a lot of like punching bags that get inserted into the comics, but we don't get Morbius all that often, and so playing with that vampirism. But by the story's end, it's really wrapped up as if we're never going to think of Morbius again, and that's a little bit disappointing to me. Even though maybe we will ultimately see him again somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, too, and not to jump ahead here, but I think like if we had kind of seen more of the effects of the bite, um, that specific to Morbius, I think it would have set up the part with, Ben and Maxine Danger a bit better. You know what I mean? Like you said, I mean, it's what are the effects? It's kind of like, well, Ben is just like really weak and kind of coming in and out of consciousness here, but it's not like, I mean, like you said, how is that specific to Morbius? It just kind of feels like, this could have been any fight with any villain that kind of knocked him out for a bit. So,
I'm not asking for him to grow 4 more arms. I'll be clear on
no,
that. But
no,
yes,
no, no. But I mean, again, like it just felt like visually there was some stuff missing that could have sold this a bit better, and they just didn't go there for whatever reason.
yeah. For me, the height of this issue though is the scene with Ben knocked out on that, the gurney or whatever in the ER at Beyond. I know that we've been kind of circling this, or spiraling around this point, which is that clearly Beyond is not interested in Ben's health in a
Right.
conventional manner, right? Like they see him as a product that they are going to use for whatever purpose they have. I don't know what that is. It could just be profit. We get maybe some inklings here towards like they are interested in experimentation and I think money to some degree. There may be something even more sinister going on. But I like the visuals of like Ben's armor coming off. Like it's not just a suit; it's like a segmented, armored,
Mm.
plated suit, which is neat to kind of see the suit dissected a little bit. But the real interesting here is seeing Maxine Danger, which one never trust someone called Doctor Danger. I think that's probably something you should take to the bank. But this scene where she's like pushing back on giving Ben the antitoxin to see like, well, what kind of side effects could we get out of this? It's the kind of evil that isn't just like mwahaha. It's like there's something more to that, and I thought that was actually really kind of an interesting scene, and seeing that even in the Beyond organization, the other people are like that would be deeply unethical. Why would we do that? So Maxine seems to be like even in a kind of maybe ethically dubious company, getting even more ethically dubious.
Yeah, I guess I'll push back a little there, where because like yeah, I mean like I kind of found that whole sequence. I mean it's interesting, but like to me like it was almost bordering on like mustache twirling for me because it was just like like y- don't get me wrong, like and I said this I think in the very very first episode that we talked about Beyond, where it's like it was kind of refreshing to have a villain or or the an antagonist just be very kind of clear in its antagonism
Yeah.
and in its no good intentions. We're not dealing with a mystery here. We're not dealing with any bait and switches. I mean, we kind of knew from Jump Street something was up with Beyond, and this is coming to fruition. But like, like that there was a part of me with that whole sequence with Maxine where I was just, I mean, yes, it gets the point across. She's a bad person that she would even debate this, and but like I kind of felt myself as I was reading, like yelling at the comic, "Oh, come on!" And to me, it kind of reflects poorly on Ben. I mean, not that he's necessarily hearing this, but like the evil, or I should say the bad intentions are so apparent,
Right.
and it's like, is Ben, he's either oblivious or complicit, and either way it's not a good look. You know what I mean? Like how oblivious can you be at this point? I mean, like, and we'll talk about Janine's role too. I mean, and kind of like how that all ties together, but like, like if he's gonna just keep working for these people because, oh well, they're paying me to, and it's my job, and blah 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 blah, and it's like, all right, well, there are a lot of people in history who did bad things because it was their job to do it. So
Yeah.
I was just following orders, but I don't know, like like part of me was like, okay, we can maybe dial back some of like the evil experimentation notions a little bit, because it just seems like a little unbelievable that this would that this person would be this like outwardly callous, and Ben would just be cool to keep working with them. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
No, I totally feel that. And I think it gets back to my consistent complaint throughout this series so far that I am enjoying quite a bit is I don't like if Ben is oblivious or if he is complicit. I want, most of the time when people are oblivious to something, they're choosing to be oblivious in some way. Like it's like the benefits
Right.
are so greatly outweighing the negatives that we could see why they would maybe not consciously look the other way, but like be predisposed to look the other way or be overly forgiving. And that's kind of where I'm at, is like, I want to know, like, where's Ben's heart at? Like the Janine stuff is obviously very tempting, right? Like that's a relationship that he values. And again, I do feel like there would be a lot of value in kind of fleshing out that relationship a little bit more. And I think there's an attempt to do that in this issue in the final scene, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but it almost comes counter to the point I'm trying to make, which is like, there's no inkling that these characters seem to be onto this evilness of this company. So yeah, it's a little all over the place. Let's talk about Janine though, her imprisonment. I think it's very clear that she's only thought of by Beyond as a motivational tool for Ben. Like she's kept at arm's length. She's not allowed into the ER with him. And I thought like maybe one of the more touching moments in the issue as we're reconnecting with this character is this image of her kind of hunched over, sad in her, beautifully furnished apartment, which we're beginning to realize is actually just an extension of the prison that she was in before. How did you react to that moment? And do you think it's like working within the kind of larger framework of this Beyond story?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, again, like you said, I mean, it's like what's her, well, we haven't really seen truly what her thoughts are on this, which is a little disappointing. I mean, okay, she clearly wanted to be with Ben when he was like in the operating room or surgery room or whatever you want to call it. But like I'm like, yeah, she's being used as a tool, I would say, by Beyond, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Ben earlier. I mean, is she okay with this? Is she not okay with this? Is she plotting how to use this to do something for herself or do something for Ben? It's still kind of, I feel like the incentives and the motivations on both ends are a little muddied and unclear. So I don't know 100% what to make of it yet, I guess.
I mean, I'll push back on that a little bit, which is I think in the previous issue, she definitely expressed to Ben how uncomfortable she was being kind of locked away in this penthouse. And I think where I'm at is I'm kind of like, I'm going to give it 2 more issues until it truly becomes a problem, because we know we're getting 19 issues. So if we go with like just typical, like, 3-act structure, if in 2 issues they come to the end of this first arc and we get a decisive thing that like Janine is like, get me out of here, and Ben begins to see Beyond, but like what's going on with Beyond, but he can't really escape it. He's like caught up in it. They have leverage on him or whatever it is. I think that's enough to kind of like fuel this going forward and give us enough of a buffer. But it does leave us in a little bit of like an extended exposition intro with these light adventures that are going on. but yeah, it's a little bit weird. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of mention while we're talking about Beyond here. I don't know if you're reading Miles Morales Spider-Man, but at the end of his most recent issue, Beyond showed up and like basically issued a cease and desist on Miles using the Spider-Man name. And I know we've seen these previews with Miles on the cover fighting Ben. So that seems like very obviously like what maybe the next story arc after this Craven story is going to be, is addressing Miles's thoughts on all of this. So that's interesting. And I know that the Beyond stuff is slowly going to spread across the entire Spider line. So it'll be interesting to see that kind of happen and chart that as it begins kind of happening throughout all these books.
Cool stuff. All right, what do we want to do next, Dan?
Well, I think we should talk about the Slack before we continue on with this review.
All right, sounds like a plan. So hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more.
Yeah, like I say every week, I hang out in the Slack all the time. Just this week, we were discussing the brand new Spider-Man freshman year animated series that was announced. I'm really excited about this series. I have a little bit of inside knowledge about it that I can't really say much about, but I think it's going to be really exciting for everybody. So if, you want to join this awesome Spider-Man community, just follow the link in the description and be sure to say hi. And once you're there, let us know what you think of the new episode. These reviews are always a lot of fun, and it's great to get feedback from everybody. So yeah, come join our Slack. Head on over to the description for this episode and click on the link to join. All right, Mark, let's get back to talking about our review of Amazing Spider-Man number 78. There's this scene that comes smack dab in the middle of the issue where we get our, I guess we're going to get our Peter check-ins. Aunt May is no longer there because
Right.
she's off kind of being a rabble-rouser, and we've yet to see the fruition of that. But we've got Felicia, who's teased in the last issue, kind of outside the window, and here she is showing up to visit Peter. What did you think of this kind of little scene in the story?
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to say this because it's making me sound like I'm the biggest Peter stan person, but like this to me was the most effective part of the issue. I mean, I enjoyed the dynamic here. I mean, because you're dealing with characters with a complicated history and, kind of, I don't want to call it a love triangle, but, they obviously Peter has had significant relationships with both of the women characters here, with Felicia and MJ. So kind of seeing the dynamic here, but then also I feel like they used this as an opportunity to really show growth in MJ. Not that I'm trying to think even in like the late 80s, early 90s, if MJ has ever like shown outright jealousy towards Felicia. I don't feel like she has. Like she's always kind of like, been like, all right, I know this happened, but whatever.
I mean, there was that whole period with like Felicia dating Flash, but I don't think MJ ever really sweated that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that was more Felicia trying to get back at Peter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's always kind of been it's been the other way around. But like, obviously, what ends up happening is, as you mentioned in the synopsis, is Felicia, kind of very briefly gets a reaction from Peter, who's been, essentially comatose now, and MJ's just like, and when MJ walks in, you there's almost this moment of awkwardness, but she's like, no, whatever, I don't care who it is and what fling it was. Like if you can get life out of him, I'm good with it. And then, she kind of throws what I thought was a really good line in there, but change your outfit in case a nurse sees you. Like it's like, yeah, like I don't know, like it all felt very kind of, cheeky and meta-ish, and it just worked for me on a lot of levels. Like I really enjoyed reading these characters kind of go go back and forth a bit here. I like, this is definitely my favorite part of the
What do you
issue.
make of like there's this, Felicia says something to Peter that we're not allowed to hear, and I kind of hope we never find out what it is because it's so much more intriguing without knowing about it. What do you make of that getting a rise out of Peter, and not anything like Aunt May or MJ has said? Is it just there to like show the growth that MJ has where she doesn't get jealous, or like is there something there? I mean, it seems like such a definitive beat to include.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but no, I mean, I kind of took it as what what you just said there, in terms of like, we needed a tool to kind of show that despite the precariousness of this situation, that MJ is not going to get jealous here. I mean, like it's showing the growth of not just MJ, but also just kind of the relationship of her and Peter, especially coming on the heels of, um, you know, everything that went into getting them back together, but not going all the way with it as some suspected they would have last time. I mean, it's like, here we are. We're showing them in basically the ultimate mature, well-grown relationship without having to put a ring on it. So there you go. Goes to show marriage isn't everything sometimes, right? Uh-oh, I'm picking a fight,
Well,
Dan.
don't do that. But I want to kind of back you up, which is I think this is kind of like the mature version of the Peter and MJ relationship that we want to see. Like I don't need to see them
Yes.
making out on a couch. That doesn't really do much for me.
No.
Like this is like a character
Right.
sacrificing for someone else, and that's always going to be more interesting. So, like, right, Peter and MJ. Like, I mean, I guess Peter's not really a part of this story, but like, but in a way he is. I mean, it's about that relationship and the level of trust that has been established there. I loved her joke about like, I don't care how many love interests I need to bring in here. We'll do it. It's kind of like that fourth wall breaking. Like, I don't know that like I would refer to my wife's exes as love interests, but it's kind of like a
Right.
comic booky term, but yeah. And
Right.
I
Right.
also kind of like, and I don't think this was intentional, but for my focus, I enjoyed that this is almost like a reverse of the Owl Octopus War scenario, where it's like Felicia visiting Peter in the hospital. Are we gonna get like? Are we gonna introduce Felicia to Aunt May? We'll get the reverse of Peter meeting Felicia's mom. Who knows?
Your favorite
I
scene
know.
ever.
I'm looking forward to it. So speaking of
There you
two
go.
women talking to each other, oh my gosh, this is the Bechdel test issue of the comic. We've got Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, and they're kind of like finishing up this incomplete Morbius storyline. To me, they still feel like some weird tangent into the world of Spider-Man, like especially as the scene
Yeah.
ends with Monica Rambeau showing up. I know our big joke is if the High Evolutionary shows up in a comic, you're not writing the right kind of Spider-Man comic.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Monica Rambeau started her life in a Spider-Man comic, so it makes sense she shows
I was
up
gonna
here.
say, yeah.
But I don't know, man. This still feels really weird to me, but I got more invested in it this time, if only because it's interesting that like there's outside forces that seem to be spying on Beyond, which means like other people are in on that there's something very wrong going on at the Beyond Corporation. At least it's enough for me to consider buying that .BEY issue, which who am I kidding? I'm going to buy it anyway, but it feels a little more justified. I kind of want to know what's going on with these people.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but like, as you kind of led off with, I mean, this still all feels really out of place in Spider-Man. Like like there's a part of me that's like, are there characters that could like play these roles and get something across that are, for lack of a better term, Spider-Man characters?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I just, are there members of the Avengers, or I mean, not that I associate Spider-Man with the Avengers, but Marvel has for the last 20 something years, so I guess I have to. But yeah, I don't know. Like it just seems like, and okay, Monica Rambeau, obviously from WandaVision and MCU, I kind of get, but like the Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, I'm not getting it. And I'm like, what are we trying to push here with the two of them beyond just this .BEY issue, that we need to have them in here. Like it just totally feels like Marvel team up from the 70s, where it was like, okay, who's a character that's got a book with the sagging sales, or we're trying to get into a spinoff, and like, let's just team them up with Spider-Man, and so it just seems very random to me.
That's the strange thing is I don't know that there's a Colleen Wing and Misty Knight book that's spinning out of that .BEY issue. So like, what are they using that to prop up, right? I mean, maybe they just have a really good story they want to tell. I mean, is it Jed MacKay who's writing that issue, or is it Kelly Thompson who's writing that issue?
I believe it's Jed MacKay.
So then I bet there's a really good story there. I mean, not to play my hand, but I think Jed MacKay is one of the better writers at Marvel. So maybe he approached them with like just a killer pitch for these characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, and we'll give it a chance. But I just, yeah, and especially since, like, you don't have a lot of Peter in this issue. You don't even have a lot of Ben relative in this issue. So to kind of spend so much page space on these three, and specifically Misty and Colleen, I'm just not. It's not clicking for me. But we'll see what the spinoff book is for now. So
yeah, well, I want to talk about that, like Ben Reilly's kind of role in this issue and in this book so far. I've already said I kind of feel like I don't quite know Ben's buy-in with the whole Beyond thing, and then you knock him out in this issue, and you literally turn him into a passive character, because he can't do anything. But I don't really like, there's not a lot of like tension or conflict that I feel around the character right now. And I wonder how much more juice this story would have if like Peter didn't give Ben his blessing before slipping into a coma. I just feel like there might be more for him to prove, and that might kind of be more like, that might not be the story they want to tell, but I do feel like I would have a little more buy-in to like Ben's actions as like Spider-Man, as a Spider-Man with something to prove, and maybe like leaning into Beyond's help to do that. That might just be like that little like bit of tension that would elevate everything. Again, it might not be the story they want to tell, but I can't help but think like maybe that wasn't the right choice to kind of like, give this character a blessing in that manner. What do you think about that?
No, I agree, and again, it kind of ties back to what we were saying earlier about Ben and his obliviousness / complicitness. I mean, like if there was a sense of tension or desperation or whatever with him in this role, I think it would make maybe either one of those reactions, oblivious or complicitness, make more sense, but like it still kind of feels like he's just like, yeah, I'm going to be Spider-Man again, guys, like, and then Peter's cool with it, and and like you're just kind of like, where's the conflict? Like there should be conflict. I mean, it's where you could say, oh, it's not the story they want to tell, but like, I mean, this is an active choice by this editorial team that like, no, we're going to take Peter not completely out of the book, but mostly out of the book, and make the focus Ben. So we need to justify it, and they're not justifying it yet. You know what I mean? Like it still just kind of feels like, no, this is just what it is, and it's like, I'd like to see more of a justification, whether it's Ben trying to prove himself in a certain way, or he needs this for some reason, with or without Peter's consent. I don't know. Like it just like you said, it needs a little more juice, I think.
Yeah, well, like what's to say this couldn't be a Peter story? right? Like Beyond approaches him and says like, we're going to help you upgrade Spider-Man. You know, we saw you get like really grievously injured during Hunted, or not Hunted, during uh oh my god.
Last remains.
No, not even Last Remains. What was the past story that we just read?
Oh,
That
Sinister War.
Sinister War. That's it. You know, like how can we help you up your game? You know, right now I don't know what makes this inherently a Ben Reilly story, and I'm sure it will play out. But right now I'm still like a little bit unsold on the concept of it all. I think the thing that really like made me feel that way was the final scene in this issue where it's like he's just on a date with Janine, and it just felt really odd to have him have like this abrupt recovery from being bitten by a vampire and totally out of it on an ER table to just like I don't know if it was later that night or like a day later, they're just kind of chilling around town, and we've established that there's this almost like drone, you know, like nanny state for both those characters, but that does not seem to be very, very present here. And Janine doesn't seem to be expressing any of that hesitancy. They're both just kind of like dreamy couple walking through Central Park. And I don't know, it seemed to kind of like jettison a lot of the kind of like emotions that we've been building up in the previous scenes, all the kind of like sell this love story and to, you know, tag Craven in at the end there. It was a really odd transition into this scene, I found.
Yeah, I would agree. So what'd you think of Craven, or is this technically, am I allowed to call him Cray Jew, or is that an Alan Schurstel only trademark?
I think that's an Alan Schurstel trademark. Although I'm completely forgetting how we even arrived at Cray Jew. Oh, Cray Jr. That's
Craven
it.
Jr.
Craven Jr.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Cray Jew. We can keep Cray Jew going.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, even though it just sounds awful. But
yes.
Well, I just have to remind everybody every time we say the word Cray Jew. But here's the thing: it doesn't even look like Cray Jew. Like, did he just have temporary tattoos on in the last time? You know, like
little like wipe-ons or whatever you call it, iron-ons.
That is a character assassination if I've ever heard one. That like this hardcore Craven the Hunter guy is using temporary tattoos. That seems to me like something the editors should have caught, that this guy is just like lacking his distinctive tattoos, which was the very thing to kind of set him aside. And I'm like, are we just going to treat this just like it's Craven? And I guess like with the setup of Crayju being a clone, that was always the goal, was like kill Craven, but not really. And we'll just go back to treating like Craven's like an acceptable bad guy again. But like, I don't know, man. At least give me the tattoos. Like, at least do me that favor of pretending it's a new guy.
I don't disagree with you there, Dan.
That said,
give me the tattoos.
That said, I'm excited for a Craven story, and like some of the covers that they've shown are so weird looking. I'm like, all right, give me the Craven story. I hope it's like a fun adventure with Craven again, that like we can eschew all the suicidal stuff and just have like a good old fashioned Craven story. You know, maybe they'll go to the zoo in Central Park and let out some animals. I mean, great. Like give me old fashioned Craven stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, it's going to be good to see, and it sounds like a multi-issue arc of Spider-Man fighting a bad guy. I mean, I know we kind of got that with Morbius, but not exactly. I mean, it was more. I mean, it's always different with Morbius, but like, yeah, like, you know, like Spider-Man is in a situation where he's gotta beat Craven. You know, like, yay! I like those stories.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, so let's give a grade to this one. Mark, I'm giving this one a C+.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be lower on you. I'm gonna be C- on this. I mean, like I said, this isn't like terrible, but you know, like to me, it's the weakest of the four we've gotten so far.
All right, that's totally fair. Well, great. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. So if you did and you find this show entertaining and valuable, please consider supporting us. Recommend Amazing Spider Talk to a friend, and if you're able, become a member of our Patreon.
Yeah, we can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. We are constantly making exclusive content for our members, right, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is one of them. So why not take $3.99, that's the price of a new comic, and put it towards a month subscription to support the show and start receiving our Patreon content. That way you'll hear our Patreon exclusive review podcast on every new issue of Amazing Spider-Man the same week they come out, instead of waiting for them to arrive in our public podcast feed.
And if you contribute $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists commissioned exclusively for our members. This season, we'll be mailing out a print by artist Ron Friends. He's created a lost page of The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man for us, which was inked by Brett Breeding, and it depicts Tim and Spidey sharing laughs over Tim's Spider-Man comic collection. Plus, every episode, we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by artist Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy.
Yeah, and right now we're in the middle of the Hobgoblin trilogy of episodes that we're doing, and I think Nick's covers for those episodes have been really stellar, and I can't wait for everybody to see the next two. I think they're going to really blow everybody away and make for really fun desktop backgrounds. So that's really fun as you're waiting for that amazing Ron Friends and Brett Breeding artwork. But yeah, we know this is a hard time for everybody coming out of the pandemic, inflation, yada, yada. As it is for us too. So we appreciate anyone who supports the show just by listening and sharing. But if you do have the means, please join us, on our Patreon to support the continued existence of our show. You can follow the link in the description to find out all the details. And lastly, again, a thank you to everybody who already makes this show possible. There's nearly 200 of you, and we can't thank you guys enough.
That's awesome, Dan. But alas, it is that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, as always, this episode was edited by our amazing editor, Rick Coast. We got production support from our good friend, Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friends, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. And our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge. So like we just said, remember, this episode was originally released on Patreon as a live stream hangout right when the comic was first released. So again, consider joining our Patreon if you want to hear this, the week it comes out and be right up to date with us on all of our comic reviews. But Mark, we're going to wrap up the show here. So until we go camping together and I get bit by a snake and you decide not to give me the antitoxin, just, see what happens. What's our motto?
Our motto, of course, is, with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
It really hurts, Mark. Give me the antitoxin.
Let's see what happens.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. In 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon, they'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing Spider